Yeah, welcome to today's presentation. This is Group A, made up of Freeman Kujogohoho, Elizabeth Besemate, and Dorothy Ali. Our presentation is on ego psychology foundations and a proponent background. So, Dorothy has not joined yet. She is having some network challenges. So, as and when she joins, she also participates. So, we want to start our discussion on ego psychology with the meaning of ego. In Latin, ego means I. And this I in ego refers to the functions of the personality in terms of how the outer man interrelates with the inner man. In other words, we can also say that how the inner man interrelates with the outer world, according to Sigmund Freud, who is the main proponent of ego psychology. Again, the ego psychology or ego itself has to do with the portion of the human personality which is experienced as the self. So if I'm talking about myself as me, Freeman, or the I, as we discussed in Latin, and how this self or the I interrelates or relates with the outer world through perception. So if we are talking of the ego, we are referring to the human being interrelating or relating with the outer world. And again, the ego is also the part of man that remembers, evaluates, plans. In other words, is responsive enough to react or act in the physical and social world. So basically, that is ego. So the next thing is also about ego. Is if we want to put it in a nutshell, ego means the psychological component of the person. And we are going a bit deeper. It's a psychological component of the personality that is represented by our conscious decision-making process, and also according to Sigmund Freud. According to Sigmund Freud. And this is the man Sigmund Freud we are referring to. As you can see in the picture, this is Sigmund Freud. We will very soon talk about him a bit in detail. Now, shall we continue?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So should I take the...
This man, Sigmund Freud, was born on the 6th of May, 1856, and lived up to 23 of September, 1939. Professionally, he was trained a neurologist, and he is considered as the founder of psychoanalysis. And this psychoanalysis is a clinical method of evaluating and treating pathologies in the psyche. So mainly how dialogue, communication. The man Sigmund Freud was an Austrian married to Martha Bernis. And he has as many as 6 children: Mathilde, Jean Martin, Oliver, Ernest, Sophie, and Anna, who later continued his father's work in the area of ego psychology. So Elizabeth will continue with his parents.
Okay. So his parents were Jacob Freud, who was his father, and then his mother, Amalia Nature, and then his professor. So he was into neurology, psychotherapy, and psychoanalysis. So
So let's
Freud,
continue with the basis for his theory. What is the basis for his theory, Elizabeth?
I hope you are talking about the foundation.
Sorry?
Are you talking about the foundation?
Yes, his basis for his theory.
Okay, so
Let's continue with the yes.
it's talking about the human mind. What is the three conscious, the conscious, and then the unconscious mind? And then again, so the pre-conscious, those are about the mind. And then with the human personality, we also classified it into three. That is the ego, and then the ego. So I believe that the human psyche is responsible for both conscious and unconscious decisions that is made on the basis of psychological drive. He also proposed that the human mind is divided into three components, which is the ego and then ego, and that interactions and conflicts among the components create personality. So our personalities are being created based on our age, ego, and then ego. I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, so according to him, there are three components of the human mind, which is the psyche that we talked about earlier, is
Okay.
divided into three components. A portion is referred to as the id, then the next one is the ego, and the third one is a super ego. About these three components of the human mind, which is the human psyche, interrelate with each other.
Yes.
And sometimes they come into conflict in terms of how they operate in the personality of man. Shall we continue?
Yes. So the id is the component of
So,
personality that forms the basis of our most primitive impulses. So with this, it is driven by the pleasure principle. So what it looks like is it desires for instant gratification of sexual and aggressive urges. So let's say a child, you want maybe money for school. Since you've asked for it, you assume your parents must give it to you, whether they have it or not, without thinking about oh, does he have it? Does my mother have it? Does my father have it? For you, you must get it. So that is it about the age. Please, can you add something to it?
Yes. And the Id is born with man, basically. The moment a baby is born, the baby is born with the Id. And later in life, the ego and the superego are formed within the human personality. Okay, let's
The,
continue.
the ego is the largely conscious controller or decision maker of personality. The function of the ego is based on the reality principle that we must delay gratification of our basic motivations until the appropriate time.
Okay, so the ego comes to strike a balance between our way, the way we want to be instantly satisfied or gratified, as opposed to the way we see the world in real life. So it is not always the ego comes in to say that it is always the case that whatever you have to get it instantly and get satisfied. So babies are carried by their parents in cars and they see other people taking ice cream and they instantly want to get it themselves. So the mother tells the baby, it's okay, I'll buy it for you when we get to the next junction. The mother is trying to develop the child's ego, trying to strike that balance, that it is not always that you have what you need immediately. You can delay it a bit. That is why the ego uh, the ego functions is based on the reality principle. You have to delay gratification. Gratification cannot always be instant. Sometimes it should be delayed. Let's move on to the superego.
So the super ego tells us all the things we should not do and strives for perfection. And when we fail to live up to its demands, we feel guilty. Thus, the superego lives on the moral principle.
Okay, so as man grows, he or she grows into the environment, the surrounding, the community. Therefore, there should be that time in the man's life where his acts in the community suits what must be done in the community. Therefore, the superego also comes in as a way of making the individual live a morally upright life. That is to say that you behave according to societal norms.
Okay.
That is to say that you behave, the man behaves or begins to behave according to societal norms. That is the function of the superego. Therefore, the superego is there to make man reach a bit of perfection or strives to meet perfection in the community. So an example is illustrated here. The E says, this is a sum of it. The E says, I want that right now, immediately, instant gratification. But the ego says, let's figure out a way to work together. Can we learn to strike a balance? You might need it, you might want it instantly, but can we delay it a bit? And the superego says, good people don't think about those things. So the super ego is making you fit well into societal norms. That is about these three um, components of personality.
Okay. So now here are
So these are some of the favorite quotes. Hello.
yeah, hello.
Yeah. So here are some favorite quotes from Sigmund Freud. Can you start for us, Elizabeth?
Okay. So he says that devout believers are safeguarded in a high degree against the risk of certain neurotic illnesses. Their acceptance of the universal neurosis spares them the task of constructing a fictional one. So this is from the Tutor of an Elite,
Okay.
1927.
Okay.
And then
Yes. The
another
next
says
favorite
that,
quote from Sigmund Freud.
okay, you can continue.
Yes. The next favorite quote from Sigmund Freud is, "Where it was, there ego shall be." This is from New Introductory Lectures on Psychoanalysis, also by Sigmund Freud in 1933. So take us through the next one.
So the ego is not master in its own house. It's also from a difficulty in the path of psychoanalysis, 1917.
Okay, so this is the model of Freud's personality structure. As you can see, personality is divided into three components. We have the ego at the top. At our left side, we have the superego, and then the id. This is the structure. And like we said from the beginning, the id operates on the pleasure principle, instant gratification, wish fulfillment. This is what I wish, and it must come to pass immediately. Then, if you go to the ego operates on the reality principle. This is secondary process thinking. This is reality testing, as we can see. And last but not least is the superego, which operates on the moral principle. And within these three personality components, we also have when we get to the id, we have the instincts, the eros and the thanatos. They are associated with the unconscious mind because, hello,
Yeah, hello.
okay, they are associated with the unconscious mind because from the beginning, we said that the human mind, we have the unconscious, the preconscious, and also, at least we remind us with the third one.
We have the conscious, pre-conscious, and then unconscious.
Okay. And when we get to the ego, we also have the psychological components. And then the superego, we have the ego ideal, which also contains the conscious. Now let's go to the next slide. These are a few publications by Sigmund Freud. In 1895, he had a publication on studies in hysteria. In 1900, he had a publication, The Interpretation of Dreams. In 1901, publication The Psychopathology of Everyday Life. In 1905, 3 essays on the theory of sexuality. Can we continue? In 1905, fragment of an analysis of a case of hysteria. Can you continue for us?
Okay, so in 1923, he published on the ego and the ape. In 1930, he published on civilization and apes with content. Then 1939, mothers and monotheism. And then
Okay.
biography.
Yeah, I think let's move to the next slide. That we are done with the presentation. And thank you for watching. Next time, we'll look at more. Enjoy your day.